we will start with Michigan at Oklahoma. The first big test for both these teams. Both of them kind of played a little patsy week one, a little get-right game. I believe Michigan played New Mexico. Now, they did get one of the craziest trick plays scored on them where you snap it between the legs to the running back, and it takes a bounce, and then he throws it over the line.
That was sick.
Not the best team, and Oklahoma didn't play a great team either, but they both took care of business. And now we get to a week 2 matchup in Norman where we're kind of waiting to see how good these teams truly are. There's a lot of hype around these teams being improved from last year. Both of them finished at 6-7 wins last season, both disappointing seasons last year for them. But, yeah, we've heard all about this step forward from both these teams. So here's a nice little litmus test to kind of gauge them by in a little night game in Norman. So thoughts on this game? What do you expect to see?
I think it's going to be very important to see what that Michigan run game looks like and how much do they need from Bryce Underwood. Justice Haynes was incredible last week. 16 carries, 159 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Ran all over New Mexico. And so I think Oklahoma, their first job is going to be stopping that run game. And then if they can take away that run game, it really comes down to what does a freshman quarterback starting a second game in college on the road in an SEC environment, what does that look like? I think that's going to be an important key. And then on the other side of the ball, John Mateer, I was high on him. Josh Bate talked me into him with the Heisman pick and everything. He looked incredible at Washington State, looked really good last week, going 30 for 37, 392 yards, 3 touchdowns and an interception. Didn't use the run game a whole lot, but didn't necessarily need to.
Yeah, he didn't have to.
I'm interested to see what that looks like. So this Michigan defense, as always, is going to be good because it's Michigan and they just crank out defensive talent and very good defenses. Unlike we had a whole miscommunication in our Michigan preview where someone thought I said the Michigan defensive line was bad because I said they only had 4-star recruits on the D-line in the past 2 years. And then I was like, that's my point is y'all have 4-star plus defensive linemen in the last 2. Anyway, they're going to be fantastic on defense. So how does that Oklahoma offense look? Do the wide receivers, they had issues last year, injuries. Do they continue to play well? They played well last week. Deion Burke, 7 catches for 88 yards and a touchdown. How does that Oklahoma offense look against a really good, or what I expect to be a really good Michigan defense?
Yeah, for Oklahoma, I think the consistency is the biggest one for me. Last week, and this is against Illinois State, which I get it, first week with John Mateer, quarterback, week in this new system with the offensive coordinator coming from Washington State to Oklahoma as well. But against Illinois State, they were just inconsistent offensively. To start the game, they go 3 and out, and then they fumble. They score 3 straight touchdowns. Come into the second half, you go 3 and out, throw a pick, touchdown, turnover and downs, touchdown. Against Michigan, I just want to see consistent drives, and it's going to be harder to do it, but I need to just see consistency offensively in this second week, and I think that'll be the key to the game for the Sooners, if they can hold up consistently offensively. And then on the Michigan side, for me, it's Bryce Underwood. Him and Justice Haynes are the keys to the game offensively for Michigan. Their defense, I think, is going to have to play really, really well. If their defense can hold Oklahoma to 14 points and Bryce Underwood can put 3 drives together and score 17, then obviously they're going to win the game because they scored 3 more points than Oklahoma. But I just want to see Bryce Underwood play under those bright lights. He's number 1 overall recruit in the nation, number 1 overall quarterback, obviously. And it's one of those spots where I think right now, like people in this week have been saying, oh, well, look how Arch Manning played against Ohio State. And with all the hype there, and I understand that. And that's a potential way this could go. But I also am curious to see if this will go the way Caleb Williams went, where he's dropped into the Red River shootout and he's down 14 and he goes off and wins the game. The way Trevor Lawrence went, where he's dropped into Kyle Field against the Aggies, leads Clemson to a comeback, goes undefeated, wins the national championship. Which Bryce Underwood are we going to get? Week 1, Arch Manning, or are we going to get a star in the making right there in front of our eyes? And I'm really curious to see how that goes. Offensively, Michigan, no real receiver help last week. Bryce Underwood completed a few passes, but his leading target. And leading receiver was a tight end in Marlon Klein. And then they also he had 0 runs, 0 carries. He was sacked twice, and those were his 2 carries. He did not run the ball at all. And that was something we saw a ton on his tape in high school. And I think it's going to be something we need to see going forward for Michigan to win games. And so I'm really curious to see how they'll use it. And I'm also curious from like an X's and O's and like coaching mind game battle, did they not use any quarterback runs to save them for this week? That is something I'm really curious to see on Saturday.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Bryce Underwood's also my key for the Michigan offense because as good as Justice Haynes is, this is a Brent Venables Oklahoma defensive line. So I expect them to kind of dig in and stop the run or at least limit it to the point where Bryce Underwood has to make plays. And I guess I said Bryce Underwood's the key, but the receiver room is also – they're going to have to get open. It's not just the defensive line of Oklahoma that's good. It's a good defense as a whole. So someone's going to have to make plays. Bryce Underwood's going to have to find a way to make plays while also not turning over the football. I think turnover margin is going to be crucial in this game because I don't expect it to be very high scoring. You throw a bad pick and the other team has it 1st and 10 on Michigan's 30 because Bryce Underwood just threw a bad pass. Well, that's at least a field goal, maybe a touchdown. That short field, I think that's going to matter a ton. But I'm just so excited to see Bryce Underwood play and what he does. Jayshon Barham, Jackson makes a good point, got suspended for targeting one of Michigan's better defenders.
Bullshit call.
Yeah.
It was awful. It was
bad.
really
bad.
Terrible.
And I really can't believe the appeal didn't work. Like, I kind of thought that, like, the refs just kind of dug their heels in and were like, we made the right call, we're going to leave it. And then they would appeal it and get it fixed. And the NCAA was just like, nah.
See, NCAA is just going to probably back their refs almost every time.
He gets called for targeting because the quarterback is short. Like, that's the only reason it happened. Just because his helmet is above the quarterback's helmet. There's just nothing he could do. And, like, the way he tackled him, too, I think is the safest way because he can't go for his legs. That's illegal. What's he going to do? Spear him like he's freaking Edge?
Yeah.
And this is WWE? I don't know what he was supposed to do. And so I hate that. And that's going to be key in that first half. How will that go? Because he is the Mike linebacker for Michigan. He's not the green dot, but he is one of the key pieces for that defense.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to flip it for Oklahoma's offense. I think their O-line play against Michigan's defensive line, which is another great unit like Oklahoma's, is huge because their O-line was terrible last year. And so this is the first big test for them. Can they give Mateer time? Can they open up running lanes for Mateer and Jaden Ott, both of them? So I'm just very interested to see how they hold up. Because if they, as good as Mateer is, if you make him play, and he's great at extending plays too, but if you can just make him have to do that continually, he's going to make a mistake at some point, in my opinion. He's going to throw a bad ball that's going to get picked off. So I really need to see that Michigan front seven cause havoc. And then conversely, I need to see if Oklahoma's offensive line can hold up or not.
Yeah, you mentioned offensive line. Luke Baklinko started at left tackle for them. They had questions if they were going to start a true freshman. They ended up starting the junior, who was listed 3rd on their depth chart. All thought it was a or, so he was technically the 3rd name. But he ended up starting at left tackle. I thought he played fine. And then Jaden Ott, 1 carry last week, was running back 3 on the depth chart. His 1 carry was in the 4th quarter on the 2nd possession. They bring him in, give him the ball. He loses 3 yards, and they take him out of the game.
Tough look for him. So they got to look out for the other running backs then.
Super curious there. He was dealing with shoulder injury throughout camp. Venables said in the post-game press conference that he missed a lot of practice through fall camp, and that was the reason he didn't start him in week 1. And then he said, you're going to see a lot more of him.
Makes sense.
So I think Jaden Ott is going to get a ton of carries this week. I hope he does because he's on my fantasy team.
Yeah, that's the kind of statement Jack needs from Dan Lanning.
Yeah, someone tell me what's going on with Mekhi Hughes, man.
One question about the X's and O's, because you talked about Oklahoma and how they didn't run a lot of their QB runs last week.
Or Michigan.
Michigan didn't run a lot of QB runs?
I mean, neither of them did, to be honest.
Right. But you were talking about how, so I'm curious to see, does Michigan have an advantage because they've seen Mateer in that system? They can go back and watch that Washington State tape. I feel like that could give them a leg up as far as handling a talented quarterback goes, because they can go back and watch tape that Oklahoma's not going to have on Bryce Underwood. We don't have a season's worth of Bryce Underwood or with that Michigan offense. We've got high school tape on him, and we've seen the Michigan offense, but not together. So I think that could be interesting. Does Michigan seem to be more aware of what's going on defense? Are they more ready for it? So I'll be interested to see how that goes.
Yeah, I want to see that as well. You make a really good point. John Mateer and that offensive system has an entire year of tape at Washington State to go off of for the Wolverines. And, maybe they sent some guys to stand on the sideline.
I
For
almost
Washington
made a
State
joke about
games
that. I almost
as
made a
well.
joke about that.
I cannot confirm if any Michigan
That would be
personnel were on the sideline this weekend for Oklahoma. They will be this weekend in Norman on the sideline. I can confirm that.
That is true.
what kind of odds could we get for that?
But that's a good point.
Minus $1 million.
That's a good point, Sanders. The lack of film on Bryce Underwood, and I think personally, like the fact that like what I saw and what we saw from Michigan against New Mexico with Bryce Underwood didn't look anything like its high school tape at all. That is really that's the most interesting thing to me is personally I would use Bryce Underwood in his ground game because I compared it to literally Lamar Jackson's high school tape. That's the way it looked, and he was playing against kind of weaker competition, sure, but he is a prolific athlete, and I want to see that against Oklahoma on the grandest stage of them all, ABC, with Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler on the call,
Sure.
and College Game Day.
Yeah. So the spread is Oklahoma favored by 4.5. What are y'all's thoughts? Y'all taking Oklahoma to cover and Michigan to cover and win? What are you thinking?
This is a tough one because it really just depends, I think, on what we see from the quarterback in Bryce Underwood. Because if Bryce Underwood plays like Trevor Lawrence when he got dropped in, I think Michigan wins this game. If he does not, if he plays, I don't remember what your other examples were. About
Arch Manning last week.
Manning, or even So
I'm thinking of guys that just had all of this hype coming in, and then their first performance. We've seen the Trevor Lawrence, the Caleb Williams, and then we saw what we saw last week with Arch Manning. And so I want to see. Now, Bryce has already played a game, so he has that advantage, but I do want to see how that looks on Saturday.
I think I'm going to pick Michigan to cover.
But not win.
No, I'm not going to pick them to win. I'm going to take
Cool.
Oklahoma wins by a field goal.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a very yucky game. I don't really think I don't see Bryce Underwood coming in and just going crazy, looking majestic
Finishing
and
with
graceful.
3 touchdowns.
Yeah, just because I don't know if the supporting cast is good enough, even if I think he is that good. And then I trust Michigan's defense enough because they have a great defensive unit to make it yucky for Oklahoma as well. But I think Michigan's going to win the yucky game in Norman, make a big statement, come out with a huge win, and move on to Big Ten play. This could be a 17-20 type game, like turnovers on both sides, fourth down stops, defenses flying around. Celebrate defense, so maybe it's not a yucky game. The defenses are just that good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to take Michigan to win this one. Go Wolverines.
Yeah, I think it's going to look more physical than the LSU-Clemson game, but I think the score is going to be very similar. Kind of scores, 17-10. I personally am taking Oklahoma to win. I just trust the offense more, and I think the defense is kind of a push. I think is arguable. Michigan's defense is better, in my opinion, but I think the home crowd will help Oklahoma's defense in that game. So I'm going to call it a push there, and I'm going to say that I trust Oklahoma's offense more. I would bet Michigan 4.5 all day, though. I do not think. I think that's too many points given to Oklahoma for as low as the total is. 17-14 seems super, super easy, and they're still not even covering by 1.5. So I would take Michigan plus the 4.5. But give me the Sooners.